The small diner on the edge of Chicago was always busy, especially during lunch hours. People came in for a quick bite before heading back to work or stopping by after running errands. It wasn't anything fancy, just a cozy place with red booths, checkered floors, and the smell of coffee lingering in the air. Emily Dawson worked there as a waitress, balancing plates and smiles with equal effort. Emily was in her late 20s, with soft brown hair tied neatly into a ponytail and a pair of bright blue eyes that sparkled even when she was tired. She had been working at the diner for nearly 5 years now, ever since she dropped out of college to support her younger brother. Life hadn't been easy for her, but she carried herself with grace and kindness, treating every customer like they were special. On this particular afternoon, the weather outside was chilly, with gray clouds hanging low in the sky. The diner wasn't too crowded, which gave Emily some time to catch her breath between orders. She refilled cups of coffee, wiped down tables, and made sure everyone was comfortable. But then something unusual caught her attention: a boy sitting alone at one of the outdoor tables. He looked no older than 8, sitting quietly in his wheelchair. His hands rested gently on his lap, and his head tilted slightly to one side. He wore a thick jacket against the cold, but what stood out most was the look in his eyes. They seemed distant, almost lost, as if he were waiting for someone who hadn't arrived yet. Emily hesitated for a moment. She didn't know whether to approach him or leave him be. After all, maybe his family was nearby and would return soon. But as she watched him from inside the diner, she noticed how the wind tugged at his scarf and how his cheeks turned pink from the cold. Her heart sank. No child should have to sit out there alone, especially not in such weather. With a deep breath, Emily grabbed a clean napkin and stepped outside. "Hey there," she said softly, kneeling beside him so she could meet his gaze. "Are you okay? Are you waiting for someone?" The boy didn't respond right away. Instead, he stared at her curiously, his lips curling into a faint smile. Emily couldn't tell if he understood her words, but she decided to keep talking anyway. "My name's Emily," she continued, keeping her tone light and friendly. "What's yours?" Still, there was no verbal reply. But the way he relaxed in his chair told Emily she wasn't scaring him off. Slowly, she reached out and adjusted the blanket draped over his legs, tucking it snugly around him to shield him from the wind. Then, noticing his hands were bare despite the cold, she hurried back inside to grab a pair of gloves from her bag. When she returned, she slipped the gloves onto his hands carefully. "There we go," she said with a warm smile. "That should help keep you warm." For the first time, the boy let out a soft chuckle. It was quiet, barely audible over the rustling leaves, but it filled Emily's heart with joy. She pulled up a chair next to him and sat down. "You know," she began, pulling out her phone, "I bet you'd like seeing some pictures of cute animals. Do you like dogs?" She scrolled through her photos until she found one of a golden retriever playing in the snow. When she showed it to him, his face lit up. Encouraged by his reaction, Emily kept showing him more pictures: cats lounging in sunbeams, puppies wearing tiny sweaters, and even a video of a parrot singing along to a song. Each image brought another smile to his face, and soon he was giggling uncontrollably. As Emily entertained the boy, she occasionally glanced around, hoping to spot someone who might belong to him. But the parking lot remained empty, and no one approached them. Minutes turned into 10, then 20, and still the boy sat there, content in Emily's company. Unbeknownst to her, Robert Hayes was rushing toward the diner. A tall man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and sharp features, Robert was used to commanding attention wherever he went. Today, however, his usual confidence was replaced by worry. He had left Ethan, the boy sitting outside, with his caregiver while attending a quick business meeting nearby. When he returned, he discovered that the caregiver had gone missing, leaving Ethan unattended. Panic gripped Robert as he scanned the area frantically. That's when he spotted them through the diner window. At first, he felt a surge of anger. Who was this woman with his son? But as he watched closer, his emotions shifted. He saw how patiently she spoke to Ethan. how she tucked his blanket tighter and laughed alongside him. There was no hesitation in her actions, no awkwardness, just pure kindness. Robert paused, leaning against the wall outside the diner as he observed the scene before him. Ethan rarely connected with strangers, yet here he was, smiling and laughing as if he'd known Emily forever. For a moment, Robert forgot about his frustration and simply marveled at the bond forming between them. Finally, gathering his composure, he walked over to the table. Emily looked up as he approached, her expression calm but curious. "Is this your son?" she asked, standing up to greet him. Robert nodded, extending his hand. "Yes, thank you for taking care of him. I'm Robert." "I'm Emily," she replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Your son is wonderful. He has such a sweet spirit." Relief washed over Robert, though he still felt a twinge of guilt for letting Ethan out of his sight. He knelt beside his son, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, buddy, are you okay?" Ethan's smile widened at the sound of his father's voice. Though he couldn't speak clearly due to his condition, his happiness was evident in the way he leaned closer to Robert. Turning back to Emily, Robert added, "I can't thank you enough for staying with him. Most people wouldn't have taken the time." Emily shrugged modestly. "It was nothing. I just wanted to make sure he was comfortable." Her humility struck Robert deeply. In his world of high-powered executives and cutthroat negotiations, genuine kindness was rare. Yet here was this young woman going out of her way to care for someone she didn't even know. Before leaving, Robert handed Emily his business card. "If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out," he said sincerely. Emily accepted the card with a polite nod, unsure of what to say. To her, it was just another act of doing what she believed was right. But little did she know this encounter would change everything for both her and Robert. The next few days passed quickly for Emily. She returned to her routine at the diner, serving customers and keeping tables clean. Life went on as usual, or so it seemed. But deep down, she couldn't stop thinking about the boy in the wheelchair, Ethan, and his father, Robert. There was something about their brief meeting that lingered in her mind, like an unfinished story waiting to be told. Emily wasn't one to dwell on random encounters, but this felt different. She had seen kindness in Ethan's eyes, resilience in Robert's demeanor, and a connection between them that spoke of love despite challenges. Still, she brushed it off as nothing more than a fleeting moment. After all, people came and went from the diner every day. Why should this family be any different? On Thursday morning, Emily arrived at work early, just as the sun began peeking over the horizon. The diner was quiet, save for the hum of the coffee machine and the occasional clatter of dishes being washed. As she tied her apron around her waist, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Pulling it out, she saw a number she didn't recognize flashing on the screen. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Good morning. Is this Emily Dawson?" a professional-sounding voice asked. "Yes, it is. Who's calling?" "This is Lisa, Mr. Hayes' assistant. He asked me to reach out regarding a potential opportunity." Emily froze. Mr. Hayes? As in Robert Hayes? The billionaire whose son she'd met outside the diner? Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of the call. What kind of opportunity?" she managed to ask. Lisa explained that Robert wanted to meet with her to discuss a position within his charitable foundation. Apparently, he had been deeply impressed by her kindness toward Ethan and believed she could bring valuable perspective to their team. Emily listened in stunned silence, unsure whether to feel flattered or overwhelmed. "I'll need some time to think about it," she said finally, still processing the unexpected offer. "Of course," Lisa replied warmly. "Just let us know when you're available to meet with Mr. Hayes. He's eager to speak with you." After hanging up, Emily stared at her phone for a long moment. A job offer from a billionaire? It sounded almost too good to be true. Part of her wondered if this was some sort of prank, but another part, a bigger part, felt curious. What harm could come from meeting him? At worst, she'd politely decline and move on with her life. That evening, after her shift ended, Emily sat alone in her tiny apartment staring at the business card Robert had given her. His name was printed neatly in bold letters along with his title, CEO of Hayes Enterprises. She traced the edges of the card with her fingers, feeling both nervous and intrigued. Maybe this was her chance to step out of the diner and into something greater. When the day of the meeting arrived, Emily dressed carefully, choosing a simple blouse and slacks that made her feel confident yet approachable. She took the train downtown, clutching her purse tightly as skyscrapers loomed overhead. The address led her to a sleek glass building that housed Hayes Enterprises. Stepping inside, she was greeted by a grand lobby filled with polished marble, floors, and modern art pieces. Lisa, the assistant who had called her, greeted her warmly and escorted her to Robert's office. Emily's nerves kicked into high gear as they walked through the halls, past employees typing furiously on computers and chatting in hushed tones. When they reached the door, Lisa knocked lightly before opening it. Robert stood behind his desk, looking every bit the powerful businessman he was. But when he saw Emily, his expression softened. "Emily, thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand. "It's nice to see you again, Mr. Hayes," she replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Please call me Robert," he insisted, gesturing for her to take a seat. "I hope I didn't catch you off guard with this invitation." "A little," Emily admitted with a small laugh. "But I'm glad you reached out." Robert smiled, leaning back in his chair. "Let me explain why I wanted to meet with you. My company runs a charitable foundation focused on helping underprivileged communities. We also have programs dedicated to supporting families with disabled children, like my own. When I saw how naturally you connected with Ethan, it reminded me of the qualities we look for in our team members: empathy, patience, and a genuine desire to make a difference." Emily blinked, taken aback by his words. "I appreciate the compliment, but I've never worked in charity before. I'm not sure I'd be qualified." "That's where you're wrong," Robert countered gently. "Experience can be taught, but compassion is innate. You proved that when you stayed with Ethan without expecting anything in return. That's exactly the kind of person we need leading these initiatives." He paused, studying her face intently. "I won't lie. This role would require hard work and dedication, but it's also incredibly rewarding. You'd have the chance to create real change, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in?" Emily hesitated. This was far beyond anything she'd ever imagined for herself. Growing up in a low-income household, she had always dreamed of making a difference, but reality often got in the way. Could she really step into such a big role? "What would my responsibilities be?" she asked cautiously. Robert leaned forward, his enthusiasm evident. "You'd help design and implement programs aimed at providing resources and support to struggling families. You'd also assist in organizing events and fundraisers to raise awareness. And because of your personal experience, you'd bring authenticity to the table, something money can't buy." As he spoke, Emily felt a spark ignite within her. For years, she had felt stuck in a cycle of working paycheck to paycheck, unable to envision a future beyond the diner. Now here was an opportunity to break free, to use her struggles as fuel for something meaningful. "I'd need time to learn the ropes," she said slowly, weighing her words. "But I think I'd like to try." Robert's face lit up with a grin. "That's all I needed to hear. Welcome aboard, Emily." Over the next few weeks, Emily dove headfirst into her new role. Robert introduced her to the foundation's team, who welcomed her warmly. They guided her through the ins and outs of running charitable programs, teaching her everything from grant writing to community outreach. Though the learning curve was steep, Emily tackled each challenge with determination. During this time, she also grew closer to Robert and Ethan. On weekends, she visited their home to spend time with Ethan, playing games and reading stories adapted to his abilities. Ethan adored her presence, and Robert appreciated having someone trustworthy to share the responsibility of caring for his son. One Saturday afternoon, as Emily pushed Ethan's wheelchair through the park, she found herself reflecting on how Much her life had changed in such a short time. Just months ago, she had been pouring coffee and wiping tables, unsure of what the future held. Now she was part of something bigger, something that gave her purpose. As they stopped to watch ducks swimming in the pond, Ethan reached out and grabbed Emily's hand. She looked down at him, smiling softly. "You're pretty amazing, you. Know that?" she murmured. Though Ethan couldn't respond with words, his bright smile said it all. In that moment, surrounded by nature and laughter, Emily realized she had found not just a job, but a family. Little did she know, her journey with the Hays was only beginning. Emily's life had transformed in ways she never thought possible. Every morning she woke up with a sense of purpose, something she hadn't felt in years. Her days were now filled with meetings, brainstorming sessions, and planning events for the foundation. She worked closely with Robert and his team to create programs that supported families like Ethan's, families who faced challenges but deserved every opportunity to thrive. At first, Emily doubted herself. How could someone, like her, who had spent most of her life serving coffee and struggling to make ends meet, lead such important initiatives? But as time went on, she began to see the impact of her work. Families came to the foundation seeking help, and Emily listened to their stories with empathy and understanding. She knew what it was like to feel invisible, to struggle silently while the world moved forward without you. That shared experience made her approachable, someone people trusted. Robert noticed the change in her almost immediately. The shy, hesitant woman he had met at the diner was blossoming into a confident leader. He often found himself stopping by her desk to check on her progress or offer guidance, but more often than not, he left impressed by her ideas. Emily had a knack for seeing solutions where others saw obstacles. She understood the importance of simplicity and practicality, qualities that stemmed from her own life experiences. Their professional relationship soon grew into something deeper. Robert began confiding in Emily about his fears and frustrations. Running a multi-billion-dollar company came with its own set of pressures, but balancing that with being a single father to a child with special needs added another layer of complexity. "I want to be there for Ethan," he admitted one evening, after a long day at the office. "But sometimes it feels like I'm failing him." Emily placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "You're doing your best, and that's all anyone can ask for. Ethan loves you, and he knows how hard you try." Her words brought comfort to Robert, who rarely allowed himself to show vulnerability. In Emily, he found not just an employee, but a friend, a person who truly cared about both him and his son. Meanwhile, Emily continued to form a bond with Ethan. On weekends, she visited the Hays household regularly, bringing games, books, and crafts to keep him entertained. Ethan adored her visits, and his laughter filled the house whenever she was around. For Robert, having Emily there was a relief. Caring for Ethan was a full-time job, and though he loved his son deeply, he often felt overwhelmed. With Emily's help, he could step back and focus on being a dad rather than a caregiver. One Saturday afternoon, as Emily played a board game with Ethan, Robert walked into the living room carrying 2 cups of tea. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, handing one of the cups to Emily. "Of course not," she replied with a smile. "Ethan and I are crushing this game, but we could use some expert advice." Robert chuckled, sitting down beside them. As they played together, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't just a casual visit anymore, it felt like family time. For the first time in years, Robert felt a sense of calm. The stress of work faded away, replaced by the joy of watching his son laugh and interact with someone who genuinely cared for him. After Ethan fell asleep that evening, Robert and Emily sat in the kitchen talking quietly so as not to wake him. "You've changed our lives, Emily," Robert said sincerely. "I don't think I've ever thanked you properly for everything you've done." Emily shook her head, brushing off his gratitude. "I'm just doing what anyone would do. Ethan is an amazing kid, and spending time with him has been a gift." Robert studied her face, noting the kindness in her eyes and the warmth in her smile. He realized then that Emily wasn't just helping him care for Ethan. She was filling a void in his life he hadn't even realized existed. Since his divorce years ago, he had thrown himself into work, using it as a distraction from the loneliness. he felt. But now, with Emily around, things felt different. Lighter. You know, Robert began hesitantly, you've become more than just a colleague to me. You're part of our family now. Emily's cheeks flushed at his words. She hadn't expected such a heartfelt admission. Thank you, Robert. That means a lot to me. The conversation lingered in her mind long after she returned home that night. Part of her wondered if she was getting too close, crossing a line between professionalism and personal connection. But another part, the bigger part, felt grateful. Grateful for the chance to belong somewhere, to be valued not just for what she did, but for who she was. As weeks turned into months, Emily's role at the foundation expanded. She became instrumental in launching a new program aimed at providing respite care for parents of children with disabilities. The idea came to her during one of her visits with Ethan. She noticed how exhausted Robert looked after a particularly tough week and realized that other parents must feel the same way. What if they had access to trained caregivers who could give them a break, even if just for a few hours? Robert loved the concept and gave her full support to develop it. Together, they partnered with local organizations to train volunteers and secure funding. When the program launched, it received overwhelming praise from the community. Parents finally had a safe space to recharge, knowing their children were in good hands. The success of the program only strengthened Emily's confidence. She no longer questioned whether she belonged in this world of philanthropy. She knew she did. And Robert couldn't have been prouder. Watching her grow into her role reminded him of why he started the foundation in the first place, to make a difference. One evening, after a particularly successful fundraising gala, Robert and Emily stood together on the balcony of the event venue looking out over the city lights. You've exceeded my expectations, Emily, Robert said, turning to face her. Not just with the foundation, but with everything. You've brought so much light into our lives. Emily smiled softly, feeling a lump rise in her throat. I owe it all to you, Robert. You gave me this opportunity when no one else would. He shook his head. No, I didn't give you anything. You earned it. Your heart, your determination, they're what got you here. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city buzzed below them, alive with energy. But up on the balcony, it was quiet. Intimate. Emily glanced at Robert, noticing the sincerity in his expression, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. She realized then that their relationship had evolved beyond friendship and mentorship. There was something deeper brewing beneath the surface, something neither of them had acknowledged until now. I should probably head home, Emily said finally, breaking the silence. It's getting late. Robert nodded, though he seemed reluctant to let her go. Thank you again, Emily, for everything. As she walked away, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change once more. This time, however, it wouldn't be because of a job or a program. It would be because of the man standing on the balcony watching her leave. The weeks that followed the gala were a whirlwind of activity for Emily. The success of the respite care program had put her in the spotlight, and she found herself juggling interviews, meetings, and planning sessions almost non-stop. Despite the busy schedule, she couldn't help but notice a shift in her dynamic with Robert. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, a connection that went beyond their professional roles. One morning, as Emily arrived at the foundation's office, she was greeted by Lisa, Robert's assistant. Good morning, Emily, Lisa said with a warm smile. Mr. Hayes asked me to let you know he'd like to see you in his office before the team meeting. Emily nodded, trying to hide the flutter of nerves in her stomach. She had grown used to working closely with Robert, but lately, their interactions carried a weight she couldn't quite explain. Taking a deep breath, she made her way to his office. When she entered, Robert looked up from his desk and gestured for her to sit. Morning, Emily. How are you holding up? I'm good, she replied, settling into the chair across from him. Just keeping up with everything. It's been a busy few weeks. Robert chuckled softly. Tell me about it. But I wanted to talk to you about something important. He paused, leaning forward slightly. You've done incredible work here, and I think it's time we discussed your future with the foundation. Emily blinked, caught off guard. My future? Yes, Robert said firmly. You've proven yourself time and again, and I believe you're ready for more responsibility. I'd like to promote you to Director of Community Outreach. It's a big role, but I have no doubt you can handle it. Emily's heart raced. A promotion? This was far beyond anything she had imagined when she first started. I don't know what to say, she stammered. Thank you, Robert. This means so much. He smiled, clearly pleased with her reaction. You've earned it, Emily, and I'll be here to support you every step of the way. As they wrapped up the conversation, Emily felt a surge of gratitude, not just for the opportunity, but for the man who had believed in her when no one else did. Over the past months, Robert had become more than just her boss. He was a mentor, a friend, and someone she deeply respected. Later that evening, after a long day at the office, Emily decided to stop by the Hayes household to check on Ethan. She had promised to bring him a new puzzle she had picked up during her lunch break. When she arrived, Robert greeted her at the door, looking unusually tired. Rough day? She asked gently as she stepped inside. You could say that, he admitted with a sigh. Work has been relentless, and I haven't had much time for Ethan. I hate feeling like I'm neglecting him. Emily placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. You're doing the best you can, Robert. No one expects perfection, especially not Ethan. He loves you, and that's what matters most. Her words seemed to ease some of the tension in his expression. You always know exactly what to say, he murmured. I don't know what I'd do without you. They spent the rest of the evening together, playing games with Ethan and sharing stories over dinner. As the hours passed, Emily noticed how natural it felt to be there, laughing and talking with Robert and Ethan as if they were her own family. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like an outsider looking in. She belonged. After Ethan went to bed, Emily and Robert sat in the living room sipping tea and reflecting on the day. The atmosphere was calm, almost serene. Outside, the city lights twinkled faintly through the window, but inside, it was just the two of them. You've changed my life, Emily, Robert said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. His tone was soft yet sincere. Not just professionally, but personally. You've reminded me of what truly matters. Family, kindness, and making the most of every moment. Emily felt her cheeks grow warm. You've changed mine too, Robert. Before I met you and Ethan, I felt stuck, like I was just going through the motions. But now I feel like I have a purpose. Robert studied her face, his gaze steady and thoughtful. I've been thinking a lot lately, he continued hesitantly. About us, about where we stand. I know things have been changing between us, and I want to make sure we're on the same page. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had sensed the growing closeness between them, but hearing him put it into words made it feel real. What are you saying, Robert? He took a deep breath, as if gathering his courage. I'm saying that I care about you, Emily, more than I ever expected to. And I think you feel the same way. For a moment, Emily didn't respond. Her mind raced with thoughts and emotions she hadn't fully processed until now. Yes, she cared about Robert deeply. He had given her a chance when no one else would, supported her dreams, and shown her kindness she hadn't known she needed. But this was something entirely new. I do care about you, she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. But I never imagined. You're Robert Hayes, billionaire, CEO, father, and you're extraordinary, he interrupted, his tone firm. Don't sell yourself short, Emily. You've brought so much light into our lives. Ethan adores you, and so do I. Hearing those words sent a wave of emotion crashing over her. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. I don't know what to say, she confessed, her voice trembling. This is all so unexpected. Robert reached out, taking her hand in his. We don't have to figure everything out tonight. All I'm asking is that we take things one step at a time, together. Emily nodded slowly, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. She knew their relationship was about to change in ways she couldn't predict, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the unknown. With Robert by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. In the weeks that followed, Emily and Robert began navigating their new dynamic. They continued to work together at the foundation, but their bond grew stronger outside of work as well. Robert introduced Emily to his close friends and colleagues, explaining that she was more than just a valued employee. She was part of his family now. Emily, in turn, shared stories about her childhood and struggles, allowing Robert to see glimpses of the person she used to be. Ethan remained at the center of their lives, bringing them closer with each passing day. Whether it was baking cookies, together, watching movies, or simply enjoying quiet moments at home, the three of them formed a unit unlike any other. Emily realized that she wasn't just building a career, she was building a home. One evening, as they tucked Ethan into bed, Robert turned to Emily with a smile. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought I'd find someone who understands me the way you do. Someone who loves Ethan as much as I do. Thank you for being here." Tears pricked at the corners of Emily's eyes, but this time, she didn't try to hide them. "Thank you for letting me stay," she replied, her voice filled with emotion. As they walked back to the living room hand in hand, Emily knew that her journey with Robert and Ethan was only beginning. What started as a chance encounter at a diner had blossomed into something beautiful, a partnership built on trust, love, and shared dreams. And for the first time in her life, Emily felt truly whole. As the months passed, Emily's life continued to transform in ways she never imagined. Her days were filled with purpose, managing programs at the foundation, spending time with Ethan, and building a deep connection with Robert. The lines between work, friendship, and something more had blurred, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, Emily felt grounded. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Robert, too, had changed. The man who once buried himself in work to avoid confronting his loneliness now embraced life with a renewed sense of joy. He still ran his company with precision and dedication, but he made time for what truly mattered: Ethan and Emily. Weekends became sacred, a time for family dinners, trips to the park, or quiet evenings at home. Together, they created routines that brought stability and happiness to their lives. One crisp autumn morning, Emily woke up early, as she often did, to prepare for the day ahead. But today felt different. She glanced out her bedroom window and saw leaves swirling in the wind, painting the ground with shades of gold and red. It reminded her of how far she'd come since that chilly afternoon at the diner when she first met Ethan. Back then, she had been unsure of her place in the world. Now she knew exactly where she belonged, with Robert and Ethan. When she arrived at the Hayes household later that morning, Robert greeted her with a smile. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I've got something planned for us today. Are you free?" Emily raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What kind of plan?" "It's a surprise," he replied, his eyes twinkling mischievously. "Trust me, you'll like it." Ethan, sitting nearby in his wheelchair, clapped his hands excitedly. Whatever the surprise was, it clearly delighted him. Emily laughed, unable to resist the contagious enthusiasm. "All right, I'm in, let's go." The three of them climbed into Robert's car and drove out of the city. After about half an hour, they arrived at a sprawling orchard surrounded by tall trees heavy with apples. A sign near the entrance read, "Pick your own apples, Fall Festival today." Emily turned to Robert, surprised. "An apple-picking trip, this is your big surprise?" He grinned. "Not just any apple-picking trip. We're also baking pies later. Ethan loves watching you cook, and I thought it would be fun to do something together as a family." Emily's heart swelled with affection. Simple moments like these meant everything to her. They spent the next few hours wandering through the orchard, picking apples and laughing as Ethan tried to mimic their movements. When Ethan accidentally dropped an apple, Emily bent down to retrieve it, only for Robert to beat her to it. Their hands brushed briefly, and both of them froze, exchanging a glance that spoke volumes. By the time they returned home, their baskets were full of fresh fruit, and their spirits were even fuller. In the kitchen, Emily took charge, guiding Robert and Ethan through the process of making apple pies. Flour dusted the countertops and laughter echoed off the walls as Ethan giggled uncontrollably every time Robert pretended to taste test the filling before it was ready. As the pies baked, in the oven, filling the house with a sweet aroma, Emily leaned against the counter watching Robert and Ethan interact. There was a tenderness in the way Robert spoke to his son, a patience that came from years of learning how to connect despite challenges. Seeing them together reminded Emily of why she cared so deeply for both of them. Later that evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Robert and Emily sat on the couch sharing slices of warm pie. The room was cozy, lit only by the soft glow of a table lamp. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, but inside, it was peaceful. "You know," Robert began, breaking the comfortable silence, "I've been thinking about something." Emily looked at him curiously. "What is it?" He hesitated for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "You've become such an important part of our lives, Emily. Ethan adores you, and I can't imagine my life without you anymore." Her breath caught in her throat. She had known their relationship was evolving, but hearing him say those words made it real. "Robert," she started, unsure of how to respond. "Let me finish," he said gently. "I know this might sound sudden, but I want you to consider something. Would you be open to officially joining our family? Not just as Ethan's caregiver or my colleague, but as part of us, for good." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. She had spent so much of her life feeling like an outsider, like she didn't belong anywhere. But here was Robert offering her a place where she could truly call home. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You don't have to decide right now," he assured her. "Take all the time you need. But I want you to know how serious I am about this. About us." Emily nodded slowly, overwhelmed by emotion. She didn't need time to think, not really. Deep down, she already knew the answer. Being with Robert and Ethan felt right in a way nothing else ever had. Still, she wanted to savor the moment, to let it sink in fully, before responding. Over the following days, Emily reflected on Robert's proposal. It wasn't just about becoming part of their family. It was about stepping into a new chapter of her life. One filled with love, trust, and endless possibilities. She thought about her childhood, growing up in a small apartment with her brother, dreaming of a better future. She thought about the struggles she faced as a waitress, wondering if things would ever improve. And she thought about the Hayes household, where she had found acceptance and belonging. One evening, after putting Ethan to bed, Emily joined Robert in the living room. He was reading a book, but he set it aside when she entered. "Hey," he said softly. "How are you doing?" "I've made my decision," she replied, sitting beside him. "I want to be part of your family, Robert. Not because I feel obligated, but because it's where I belong." Relief and joy washed over Robert's face. He reached out, taking her hands in his. "Thank you, Emily. You've already brought so much light into our lives. I can't wait to see what the future holds for us." From that day forward, Emily moved into the Hayes household permanently. Together, they created a loving environment where Ethan thrived and Robert found peace. Emily continued her work at the foundation, using her platform to advocate for families like theirs. Each day brought new challenges, but they faced them, together, as a team. One sunny afternoon, as Emily pushed Ethan's wheelchair through the park, she noticed how happy he seemed. His laughter echoed through the air, drawing smiles from passers-by. Robert walked beside them, his arm resting lightly on Emily's shoulder. They paused by a fountain, letting Ethan splash his hands in the water. Looking at the two most important people in her life, Emily felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. What started as a simple act of kindness at a diner had blossomed into something extraordinary. She had found not just a job or a home, but a forever family. And as they stood there together, surrounded by sunshine and laughter, Emily knew one thing for certain: her life would never be the same again, and she wouldn't have it any other way. Life in the Hayes household settled into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. Emily had officially become part of their family, not just in name, but in spirit. Every morning began with Ethan's cheerful laugh as he greeted the day, followed by Robert making coffee while Emily prepared breakfast. The house was always filled with warmth, laughter echoing down the halls, quiet conversations over meals, and moments of shared joy that made it feel like home. Emily continued her work at the foundation, balancing her professional responsibilities with her role as part of the family. Her promotion to Director of Community Outreach gave her the platform she needed to create even more meaningful programs. She worked tirelessly to expand access to resources for families like theirs, ensuring no one felt alone in their struggles. At the same time, being with Robert and Ethan reminded her why she started this journey: to make a difference, one life at a time. Robert, too, found himself changing in ways he hadn't expected. For years, he had poured his energy into building a successful career, often sacrificing personal connections along the way. But now, with Emily by his side, he learned how to slow down and appreciate the little things: the sound of Ethan's laughter, the comfort of sharing dinner together, or simply holding Emily's hand as they watched the sunset. He realized that success wasn't measured by wealth or power, but by the love and happiness you shared with those closest to you. One crisp winter evening, after a long day at the foundation, Emily arrived home to find the house unusually quiet. She walked through the living room expecting to see Robert and Ethan, but instead found a note on the dining table. "Go upstairs." Curious, she climbed the stairs and opened the door to her bedroom. What she saw took her breath away. The room was transformed. Twinkling fairy lights hung from the ceiling, casting a soft glow across the space. In the center of the bed lay a small box wrapped in silver paper, tied with a ribbon. Beside it was another note: "Open me." With trembling hands, Emily picked up the box and unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a delicate necklace, a simple gold chain with a heart-shaped pendant engraved with the words, "Forever Family." Tears welled up in her eyes as she read the inscription over and over again. Before she could process what was happening, Robert appeared in the doorway, holding Ethan in his arms. "Do you like it?" he asked softly, his voice tinged with nervous excitement. "I love it," Emily whispered, clutching the necklace tightly. "But why?" Robert stepped closer, his expression serious yet tender. "Because I wanted you to know how much you mean to us, to me. You've given us so much, your kindness, your strength, your love. And I wanted to give you something that shows how grateful we are." Ethan reached out toward Emily, giggling happily. She bent down to hug him, feeling an overwhelming surge of emotion. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "This is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me." Robert smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You deserve it, Emily. More than you'll ever know." As the weeks went by, Emily wore the necklace every day, a constant reminder of the family she had found. Together, they navigated life's ups and downs, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating victories, big and small. Whether it was helping Ethan learn new skills, attending fundraisers for the foundation, or simply enjoying lazy Sundays at home, they faced everything as a team. One spring afternoon, Emily stood in the backyard, watching Ethan play with a set of colorful blocks. The sun warmed her skin, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers. It was moments like these that made her heart swell with gratitude for the life she had built, for the people who loved her, and for the journey that brought her here. Robert joined her outside, handing her a glass of lemonade. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, standing beside her. Emily smiled, leaning into him. "I was just thinking about how lucky I am. A year ago, I never imagined my life would turn out like this. Now I can't imagine it any other way." Robert wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "We're the lucky ones, Emily. You've changed our lives in ways I never thought possible." She turned to look at him, her eyes shining with emotion. "We've changed each other's lives, Robert. That's what makes this so special." Later that evening, as they tucked Ethan into bed, Emily lingered in the doorway, watching him drift off to sleep. His peaceful expression filled her with a sense of contentment she hadn't known before. When she returned to the living room, Robert was waiting for her, a thoughtful look on his face. "There's something else I've been meaning to say," he began, taking her hands in his. "You've done so much for us, for Ethan, for me, for the foundation. But I want you to know that it's not just about what you do. It's about who you are. You've taught me what it means to truly live, to cherish the moments we have and the people we share them with." Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "And you've taught me that it's okay to dream bigger than I ever thought possible. You've given me a second chance at life, Robert. I'll never be able to thank you enough." He pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her as if afraid to let go. "You don't need to thank me, Emily. Just promise me one thing, that we'll keep building this life together. No matter what happens, we'll face it side by side." "I promise," she replied, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. Months turned into years, and the bond between Emily, Robert, and Ethan only grew stronger. They celebrated milestones: Ethan's first steps with assistance, Emily's successful launch of a nationwide initiative for families with disabled children, and countless birthdays marked by laughter and love. Through it all, they remained united, a testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and unconditional support. One summer evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the twilight, Emily turned to Robert with a smile. "Do you remember that day at the diner, when I met Ethan for the first time?" Robert chuckled softly. "How could I forget? You changed our lives forever that day." Emily leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling a deep sense of peace. "I didn't know it then, but meeting you and Ethan was the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't trade this life for anything." Robert kissed the top of her head, his heart full. "Neither would I, Emily. Neither would I." As they sat there under the stars, surrounded by the sounds of nature and the warmth of their love, they knew they had truly built a forever family. Their journey had begun with a simple act of kindness, but it had grown into something extraordinary, a story of hope, connection, and the unbreakable bonds that define us. And in that moment, they realized something profound. Sometimes, the smallest gestures can lead to the greatest transformations, proving that love has the power to change lives in ways we never expect.